We ask that as each panel occurs today, if we can all, I know that we've got times that the speakers will be talking and then times where you're going to want to ask questions and have feedback. We ask that everybody be respectful. If you do want to speak, just raise your hand quietly versus speaking out while other people are talking, and everybody will get their chance to contribute, and we can have a good cadence with each panel. I know there's a lot of great passion and information to be shared, and we're really excited to introduce the first panel. We've got Ray Maki, the president of the Hawai'i Hemp Farmers Association, and Gail Baber, who will be speaking about this great organization. If you are not familiar with it, go to Hawai'i Hemp Farmers Association, is it .org, Hawai'i Hemp Farmers Association.org. There's memberships and information available there. A great opportunity to get some education and follow the legislation that's happening in Hawaii. So please welcome Ray Maki and Gail.
Woo!
Morning, everyone.
Just sit still.
Yeah, why don't we just come on up and have a seat, Gail. My name is Ray Maki. I'm a proud HFUU member from Kauai. Gail Baber is Hawai'i Hemp Farmers Association board member from Big Island, and active HFUU member as well. So, well, the Hawai'i Hemp Farmer Association grew out of the perceived need to come to conversations that we were having with the state and other various agencies as a united voice of, the licensees at least, but, we include all, people who are interested in processing and advocating for, rational hemp and cannabis laws. But, our focus is hemp, of course. And so that sort of just started, like I said, from a perceived need that an industry group was desirable and necessary. And so we kind of got the idea going, and the genesis of it last year about this time. And so we got organized, and then lo and behold, we need banking, because we're a paid membership. It's $50 a year. And we don't take corporate memberships. We're like HFUU. We want to work with individuals within whatever corporate structure you're in, but to be a member, you're an individual. And so, wow, we got wheels under us. But then when we went to open a bank account, no Hawaii bank would work with us, even though all we were doing was advocating for the industry, not touching the plant ourselves, not engaged in any kind of processing or, active handling of the plant. That was still a problem. So that objective was finally overcome just months ago. And so we're up and running. I think we have about 15 members. And I'm encouraging anybody who has a license or is really interested in moving this crop forward in Hawaii to please join in. So, Hawai'i Hemp Farmers Association.org. So, as you all know, we just got the USDA rules the other day, and we've been distilling that. We've been working. Gail's been working really hard, assembling the talking points of the organization and how we were going to offer rational choices to the state about how to run the program. With the delivery of the rules, that certainly kind of puts a framework around what our comments are going to be. And, that's where we're at today, is just kind of assembling those talking points from what we saw in the rules and how the state itself can actually come up with its own policies for administering the USDA program. So, Gail, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, we're still developing talking points, but we can maybe have a conversation with folks today about what we think are important in terms of developing the industry in Hawaii. But I think for me, and I know for others that were involved in the development of the hemp industry here, and folks that have been working on it for decades, including my husband, who started the Hawaii Hemp Council in 1992, so a while ago, and other folks as well, obviously, is that this is part of the context. Is this it's obviously about sustainability and food security, and about rural economic development or economic development in Hawaii. And so how can we embrace the new USDA federal interim rules and help guide our state program to support those objectives, kind of the origins of why we were so supportive of hemp. So a lot of the changes that we're looking to make to our hemp program in the state are supporting those objectives. How can we make it so that organic farmers in the state that actually subsidize a lot of the food through spouse second jobs or just not even covering all their costs can make a little bit of money on the side. So growing hemp for CBD can help support food security. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. And we know if we're able to develop a hemp industry that supports Hawaii hemp farmers, that money is going to circulate in Hawaii many times over, something like 9 to 10 times. Because as you can imagine, there's a lot of people from around the world that are looking at Hawaii and wanting to brand their products or get oil that says Hawaii and hemp on it because it just has such a strong market appeal. We know Kona coffee can get, it's one of the top 10 most expensive coffees in the world. There's other examples of that as well. Our chocolate is beginning to have a higher value as well. So we wanted to ensure that there's a way for Hawaii farmers and our communities to benefit from that. So when we look at the changes we're trying to do for our program and implementing the new rules, that's kind of the basis of where we're coming from. Is that fair? Yeah. Okay. Should we talk a little bit specifically about where we want to go, or?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of give an overview of where I'm just speaking as a private person, not really as the president of the Hawaii Hemp Farmers Association, about where I see the landscape of this beginning of this industry in the state. And we're, as Gail mentioned, our brand really is our biggest opportunity and advantage that we have. And, we only have 1 or 2 opportunities with, an end receiver of our product to really impress them that, oh, this is a Hawaii product, and, it's as good or better than the other products on the market. And then, well, what is the price point? Is it worth the extra money that we might consider charging for it? And so our brand really is our most valuable resource that we have moving forward. And so quality control and whether or not a Hawaii labeled product is actually a Hawaii produced product or has Hawaii ingredients in it, those are going to be key things that we're going to be watching out for to protect our industry. And but every other factor relating to the production of the plant, other than year-round, relatively constant temperature, is going to be a disadvantage here. Just all of our costs of every input that we have into the production of this crop is more. We're in a regulatory environment that doesn't appreciate or completely understand this industry. And then up until quite recently, the political initiative to advance the first program in the country. At this point, I've heard people that I don't even need to mention their names say that, oh yeah, the general talk is Hawaii has one of the worst programs in the country. So we're starting off slow. We've missed years of opportunity to participate in the way that we can watch other states like Oregon or Colorado, improve their bottom line and support the farmers in their state. So we're starting off at a little late in the game. And fortunately, I don't think it's too late as long as we can really hooey up and build this brand together. And, we have, each island is sort of a boutique opportunity to brand Maui hemp or Big Island hemp in the same way. So, there might be distinctions in that sphere that are worth working with. But I think the opportunity to work together, once we can move flower from my farm across the street, it's bothered me for a while that we can import hemp to our state but can't even operate as neighbors to support each other or the industry. So those restrictions are hopefully going to be changed quicker than later, and I think we have a good opportunity to do that. But I think that one of the big issues that we've had is that we want to try to preserve this industry for the people of Hawaii and the farmers of Hawaii. And we can certainly see the national and international model for this is that local producers begin. People like that brand. Other locations have branding opportunities too. California, Oregon. Certain regions within those states, have a name and a brand identity. How are we going to preserve the smaller holders' interests moving forward without precluding what are going to be rational adjustments to the industry requiring like capital from outside sources or generated within the state itself? What are the acreage restrictions on outside players, ownership restrictions? Potentially, these aren't like actual laws or statutes, but just the position of the organization and the positions of the membership. So, Gail, I know you wanted to say something about that.
Yeah, just a little bit of context again to why we're doing what we're doing in terms of trying to build a hemp industry here that supports food security, that supports the local farmer, that recirculates the dollar here. I think it's no accident that we're having this conversation in a Hawaii Farmers Union United tent because in terms of the most recent legislation, this decade, it was the Farmers Union that really drove the effort to coordinate people statewide to support our great legislators to get the initiative passed. And the Hawaii Farmers Union supports all farming, and at the same time, we certainly embrace a lot of regenerative practices. And we care about how the land is farmed and whether or not we take care of the ecosystem services in our community while we're farming. And so when we're looking at the programs, the changes we want to programs within our state, we're looking at those kind of foundational values or elements. And I can tell you, as a matter of fact, we've had several people in our living room, outside interests, some international, that have tried to coach us to do things that to make a quick buck that would not be good for the land, would not be good for our community. And so when we talk about things about like acreage restrictions for the first time you get a hemp permit, or when we talk about having a residency requirement, so the majority ownership is for white people and those dollars circulate. That's why, because we've actually had one-on-one actual experience of larger industries that are holdings that want to come in, plant very large acreages for medicine, the CBD. We're really happy to embrace anyone that wants to come in and plant thousands of acres of hemp for remediation or for fiber, or start an industry that way. But the CBD market is if you know anything about it, it has many faces to it. It's a wonderful thing, and medicine that hemp can provide is, or the nutritional value to it is incredible, but it's got other faces to it. People who want to make a quick buck, who don't care about the community, don't care about the land. And so the changes that we're advocating for do all of that.
So I forgot to mention our biggest disadvantage currently is, I believe, is a plant that actually is adapted to our short day. So until, you know, we can grow this plant open field in a daylight neutral circumstance, that is going to be that. And to tell you the truth, smart money sees that problem, and you know, with the delays that we've had in the last year, money that was generated, or capital that was generated and coalesced here in Hawaii has been on hold, or actually decided to leave the state for the last few good years of, you know, the peak of the market. And so I just wanted to add that to the list of disadvantages that we have. And right now there's about 30 licensees in the state. You know, Doug was telling us, and you know, we all know that in other states there's thousands of licensees. And and when we look across at the whole panorama of who those licensees are, there's a few people within that group that really have the capacity or the capital to bring processing facilities to a reasonable scale. And then there's a lot of people who just want to be involved with the industry because they appreciate the plant and the opportunities as farmers and entrepreneurs. But while we have a broad group of people in the room, Gail, why don't we discuss some of the issues that we're trying to gather comments about in an association position about.
Sure. Yeah, get into the specific details. Yeah, and then Steve, I think, had a comment you wanted to make real quick.
Well, something that hasn't been mentioned, I just think that it's one of the things that is a challenge, but also just curious to get an update. We have 30 permit holders, and I've heard many of them talk about doing extraction, but yet we still don't really have an extraction facility anywhere in the state that has access to. So if there's any comments on that and where those are and that we know of, or how that's going to work, that would be helpful information.
I'm going to let Ray address part of that, but the one thing I want to say with regard to our organization and extraction is one of the positions, or one of the things we know is that farmers know how to protect public health. They know how to process agricultural products. They know how to do it well. And so one of the things that our organization is looking at is ensuring the right for a farmer to be able to process on their agricultural land. So, but I'll let Ray address you're talking about what might actually be available right now for processing, correct? That's the
Or
question.
the near term.
Yeah.
Well, until we can move flour, the only people who are processing are the people who can have the wherewithal to be vertically integrated.
So are any of them doing that out of the 30?
I'm beginning extraction this week myself on my own biomass, and there's another licensee on Kauai who's just about to do that. And you know, they're kind of a test case for the right of the farmer to create an added value product on their farm. So the county of Kauai has been willing to work with them and permit their facility with their UL listed devices, with their fire engineer design. You know, this is, you know, just because you have the right to process doesn't mean that, you know, the state or the county is going to look the other way when you're handling thousands of gallons of ethanol and, you know, have, you know, machinery that you've just pieced together with grandpa, you know. So you know, I think you need to realize that this is, and then even beyond the permit to do it, well, how is the FDA going to receive it, and what are the conditions, and what are the permits that they're going to demand for, taking this and refining it into a pharmaceutical, whether it's like the classic definition of a pharmaceutical, or whether it's just an herbal extract that has, various, medical advantages. So, be ready to, if you are going to have a facility, to have it inspected, to have it permitted, and to make sure that it's not it's at an appropriate scale for the neighborhood that it's in, and that you have neighbors that aren't going to complain about it. All these are like, factors that everyone in any neighborhood should consider. So I'm not quite sure about where other counties are at with their production. I know that there's a willingness to have a large-scale production facility on Oahu with Hawaii licensees, generating that initiative. So, and I know that there's people on Big Island, getting geared up and ready to do it too. But I think the whole state has been held up by the inability to move flower from one location to the other. It's really it's the bump in the road, and until we can overcome it, the only people who are going to be making a Hawaii product with a Hawaii label on it are the people who have the capital to generate, or to create the facility that they need to do it.
On that point, to not be able to move biomass, could you give an update on it, and why that, is that a part of the bill, or is it a part of
It's a change we can
It's
absolutely
a
have.
legacy from, yes, we're going to be able to create a new statute that will allow that, but it's a legacy of a program that began 5 years ago but hasn't been updated. So there's been inertia at the state level, in the administration, I believe, is primarily the focus, but the legislature is finally willing to pick it up, and and apparent from outside, look inside, really wants to support and get this thing moving. It was just some issues with the bill that was generated last year that the governor felt obligated to veto it, again, through an exercise of overcaution around. I can't believe the wasted time and concern for this plant that, it's 0.33, it's like, who cares about like hundredths of a percent of THC.
And we were one of those farmers that we had a 0.33 crop and had to destroy it. We didn't know that we could go for an exemption, and if I had been smart, because I have a background in engineering and used to work in labs with HPLCs, I would have asked for the standard deviation on the lab's work. So, lesson learned. I think Ray makes really good points. It's been really rocky and really hard for hemp farmers and the pioneers in this state, and that's one of the reasons we organized to found this organization. Thank you to Lely and Ray and all the initial people who did that. And so we do have a number of items that we're hoping that the legislature and our good friends in there are going to help us with. I think we're set to do that. One quick comment before we jump into those, because I think we want to have a group conversation maybe a little bit about that, is you talked on a little bit that one of the things we know is if the farmer can be involved all the way up, the farmer's going to make money. And if the farmer makes money, we're going to have more food. We're going to have better communities. And the way to do that is, as you said, is being vertically integrated, which means having some kind of value-added product that comes off your farm. So some farmers may just want to process and sell a raw product to be, to grow and sell a raw product to be processed. But I think a lot of them, I think Hawaii is is unique in the sense that we could have a lot of small boutique brands here, and the farmers doing well. And I think if we cooperate together and hui together as farmers, which we're beginning to do, we're all going to succeed super well, instead of maybe one or two brands shooting out of California, Oregon, and going to the top. Kona coffee farmers do all right, and there are, how many different bags can you go and pick from the different estates there? So I think that's what we're shooting for in terms of the changes, because if you're just growing biomass, the farmer makes like this much, yeah? And then, of course, by the time it gets all the way to the shelf and the consumer, it's an enormous, insane compared to any other agricultural product. And as a farmer's wife, I'm like, yeah, no, everyone needs to have a piece of that. It's time to share, and Hawaii is a really good place to implement those types of models. So I think we want to talk a little bit about what the organization's initial goals are in terms of working with farmers to get the hemp program changes we need this next year. Yeah, go ahead, Steve. Yeah.
It comes back to the mechanisms of what now is changing with the USDA rules that came out and how that applies and overrules or doesn't state law. That's it goes into effect immediately. There is a 60-day comment period. So where does, maybe it's a question for Richard, but with those going into effect, are our state laws still superseding federal law, or now that that's in effect, can we move biomass?
No, well, the state my understanding is the
not submitted
state.
anything to the USDA, so how does that work?
Well,
State law can exceed the federal standard.
Yes.
So currently it does, and our efforts and other people's efforts are to meet the federal guidelines and not exceed it. But currently under statute, it exceeds the federal boundaries, and the state is within its rights to.
So we're stuck with that until at least the next legislative
or
that's
until our new hemp program is approved by the USDA. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Or no, the statute needs to be undone. Is that correct, Richard?
Yeah. Well, right now we're stuck with the pilot project, which is old news, and we need something new. But then we have to adjust this coming legislation to what the USDA is putting out, and maybe get that tweaked.
Our legislation has to be aligned with what the program is that the USDA is going to approve.
Which is unfortunate because the USDA, those rules are, causing real problems. I surprised me. I thought it was going to be much more.
The new interim rules that the USDA just put out, for Hawaii, they aren't totally shocking because we've been working under some pretty heavy restrictions. And the new rules are pretty shocking to, I think, some of the other states, if you guys are familiar with the new USDA rules, especially with regard to testing. But it's exactly what Hawaii has had. I think one of the primary things in the new rules that USDA came up with that are really, really difficult and impossible to implement in Hawaii is if you have a crop that tests over 0.5, 0.3, and then you can petition, but over 0.5 total THC, you have to have a DEA agent come and you pay for all the expenses involved and to haul that away. So if you've got quite a bit of biomass, you're paying for dump trucks, and then where are they going to take it? And why are we destroying biomass that could be turned into fertilizer and composted with microorganisms? It never touches a consumer's lips. So I think that is the one area in the new rules that absolutely will not work for Hawaii. There isn't the federal presence here to help us with it. There aren't the dollars, and it doesn't make sense for our island to be wasting any biomass whatsoever. It should be going back into the land if for some reason you weren't able to grow it the way that you grow it. So I think that's one point that our organization's going to press the state to push back on the feds. And actually, if you look at the new interim rules, the feds say multiple times in there, we want your feedback. We're trying to make this real. We know that this is the first shot out of the gate, and we're doing the best we can. And in fact, they acknowledge that their rules are based on mainland growing seasons, which aren't ours. So that presents a whole nother list of issues. So the changes that we're hoping to have in Hawaii will we'll work through the legislature, but we also will have to address through our State Department of Ag petitioning USDA.
Yeah, there's some room within the USDA rules to for the state to offer their comments and how the rules are stated. And so, excuse me, why don't we just start with what we just brought up? So if you have a hot crop, and it's, so we all know that it's combined THC, that's THCA, Delta 9, in combination with each other, and that's over 0.30, that's a hot crop. And the state USDA recognizes that, you know, this genetics in Alabama will perform differently than it will in Hawaii. So, you know, you're playing roulette with your timing, you know, for like, well, oh, I'm used to doing it, testing at this stage. Well, get ready to test even earlier. And basically in the second week of flower, you should be taking a harvest test. Hate to say it.
And then the new rules require you to harvest within a couple of weeks of that testing.
Yeah. So
just being prepared for less,
like,
less
you know,
productivity.
genetics. I'll say it 3 times and then I'll say it one more time. Genetics. If you don't have good genetics, you're really shooting yourself in the foot and starting from a disadvantage. So, and then understanding those genetics in this environment, I use Oregon CBD, and that's, I understand it, that line of genetics now after growing them for a year. When I need to test, every time I've tested it at that time has been compliant. I've had 5 compliant tests, and so, you know, it'll be different with something else. And I don't know, go ahead, Laura.
Can you walk through for maybe a farmer that's never brought genetics in, what their process would be as say in a perfect world they've got their new permit, what would be their process from finding, say, an Oregon CBD genetic to getting it approved and being able to grow in their farm?
You need to make a genetic request to the state, and that would include the COA and the license of the supplier of the seed materials. Total THC needs to be below 0.3, and they need to sign an affidavit that that COA was taken 2 weeks before harvest. So just even that request is something that mainland seed genetic producers aren't used to testing. They're testing a month before. You know, now we've been running under the enhanced rules for almost a year now, and you know, what a pain in the butt that is. But in some ways, it's kind of put producers like myself at something of an advantage because I already have a working system. You know, I'm not getting 16% CBD like I could be on this plant. I'm getting 9 to 11%. And my weight is 60 to 75% of what I would hope it to be. And so, you know, all those are disadvantages that everyone in the country is going to have to, you know, undergo. And it's going to really change. There's going to be a lot of hot tests on the mainland next year if they decide to enforce. It's almost guaranteed that everybody at some stage of this crop's development in their field is going to be holding a hot plant somewhere.
And that is one of the, I'm sorry, please.
I apologize and thank you for what you both are doing. And in line with her question, I'm new in a lot of this stuff, but I've done some research over the months, as well as over the years, but really more in detail over the months. So can you explain to us, this young lady and I, and others, you know, when you harvest and the CBD oils and all that, and I don't know how, I'm gathering my thoughts here, but there's all these percentages, and then when you go to a different range, there's a different percentage. I come from here, and the pineapple system, or the Maui pineapple, when you got first crop, second crop, third crop, when you pick it, the acids change. Same with with the flower, when you pick it. So it's all about the timing. When you harvest and then it sits, things can change. And then when you do the testing, so I don't know if there's testing on this island or if you're just doing it personally, but there's challenges there, and that's where we got to start lobbying for new procedures, and then, yeah. So the solution, maybe.
Well, you know, so getting back to what Gail was saying, you know, when you're hot at between 0.3 and 0.5, USDA, Department of Ag, realizes that, oh, this is a normal fluctuation in the plant. You know, it's not an egregious, you know, hot plant, and you know there is a variable of testing accuracy that they're also including into their analysis. And so you know, it's like, okay, you're a hot crop, one strike. Okay, you get three
crops or 4 crops in a year?
Up to 5 or 6.
Well, we could just be in continuous production.
Yeah.
So,
It changes each time, right?
what's that?
The percentage of your content of the
Right.
oil.
It's like any plant. There's going to be variable compounds.
So that might be the problem out there,
Well-
where we got to set that.
It is the problem, and it's all solved by, you know,
Knowing your genetics.
decriminalizing the plant, and you
But the
know,
state doesn't.
but you know, so between 0.5 and 1% is, you know, you're really hot. Like, what are you doing? Either you don't know what you're doing, you're trying to game it, or you have, you know, you're growing marijuana, is what they're thinking. So under like what they say in the rules, as Gail mentioned, that means an agent of the authorities comes to your site and watches you load up dump trucks for this material to be taken somewhere else and dumped where? You know?
Well, that's what's proposed under the new USDA rules, and we're saying that that's not feasible in Hawaii if a farmer accidentally goes hot. None of us are trying to grow hot crops, obviously, because we have huge amounts of money and time and effort invested in this. But I think, as Ray said earlier, it's, you know, knowing the genetics and working the plants for sure. Do you think we should focus on some of the other changes we need to the program to make them friendly for the farmer? Because testing is really big, but there are other things that are really super important to support our base foundations of our communities, rural economic development.
I will say one more thing about testing. So what we were just discussing is remediation, but actually, like, the methodology for the field test here in Hawaii also has to be articulated. And the one that Steve Hill, the lab that I'm working with, uses is that they measure the corners of the block. They're going to take the first 3 inches off the top bud of the corner plants, and then there's going to be another random middle plant. I like that system because I understand how it all needs to be managed, and it takes away the bias of the tester. You know, even if the tester is friendly, oh, I'm going to take that one, and oh, I'm going to take that one. You know, it's like.
Well, that's important for a fair system, is to have set criteria, and so then everyone's treated the same in terms of how they're being sampled. So
we're going to be making that recommendation as well. But Gail, I'm going to turn it over to Gail. Why don't you bring up another one of the points?
Clarence Cab has a quick.
Yeah, testing, I'll say a little bit about that. First of all, when we worked with Dr. Ko, he was very clear that there's over 80 qualified people within our state to run all the tests we need. We have the equipment, our state has the equipment. We don't have the resources or the funding, we haven't delegated that to help our hemp farmers particularly, but we have those resources kind of in the state already. That's one thing. So if we could get state resources to help us do our testing, and you know, instead of being $250 a test, more like free or whatever it takes to get us up and running, and then maybe pay for testing later. The other side is genetics. You know, we look at genetics, and you've been fortunate to find good genetics out of the gate. That's really good. You're still going to have to work with that as the season goes and things change a little bit. Other people are going the other way and saying, well, let's just eliminate THC entirely, like with the CRISPR technology. And so that is being closely looked at as well. And where to say we need that, or we want to support that, or is that our actual solution here in Hawaii, is something we need to also discuss maybe as a group, because CRISPR technology, just like others, is still somewhat unregulated and unknown about what could actually happen with those results. But I guess there's a company, I guess here on Maui, that's already got that kind of thing going on, and so they can go as big as they want, sooner than they want.
Well, I want to try to address that real quick, because I think, you know, obviously as an organization, Hawaii Farmers United and also our hemp organization, I don't know that we're going to advocate one way or the other for farming practices, but we all do regenerative farming. We know it's better for the farm and the land, and whether or not genetically modified is the way to go, I don't know. But I do know that that what gets top dollar in most places is organic and not GMO products. So I think if we have some kind of branding and certification that way, that might squeeze that type of technology out. I don't know.
Well, you know, we can decide as an organization, you know, what our position is about, you know, organic or regenerative approaches. You know, even though Hawaii Farmers Union, I'm an old HFUU guy, and I kind of use the model of what we've done here, is if you're a family farmer in Hawaii and you're growing hemp, you're welcome to join the organization. You know, whether you're spraying some Roundup on the fence or you're using a little bit of non-organic fertilizer, I'm still your friend. And, you know, I'll try to educate you about, you know, what the advantages of doing it another more natural way are, but that doesn't mean that, you know, we can't be friends and you can't be a member of this organization. So so we'll have internal discussions about that, but I think, like, you know, while we have the House Ag chair sitting in the room, you know, I think it'd be great to.
I think we've only got about 6 minutes too.
No, we're going to go over. And so acreage restrictions, Gail, Lee, take us away.
Yeah, so right now, if you go for a permit under the existing Hawaii law, you can be permitted to grow up to 10 acres. And in our discussions, we're going to propose to the state and to our legislator friends that we do continue to have acreage restrictions. For someone, it's their first time application to receive a permit, you get to grow 10 acres. The second year, maybe double that. If you've been here 3 years, it means you're really into Hawaii, you're invested in Hawaii, you're invested in the communities, then maybe remove the restrictions. And we're talking about for growing for CBD and the more high value crops, not for fiber. If someone wants to come in and do tons of soil remediation, that's fine. If someone wants to come in and grow a bunch of fiber for cloth or biofuel, that's fine. But with regard to the CBD market, which is where there's the most money right now, we're trying to protect our land, protect our farmers, and not have a bunch of slash and burn come in at thousands. You know, folks come in, the outside interests that we talked about before, or maybe even inside, and just extract, because there's a hot market for CBDs, and what we were trying to prevent is someone come in and plant a whole bunch of acreage, get to use the Hawaii name, extract all those dollars, extract all those resources from the state. So we're looking at an acreage limit of the first year you get to grow 10, you prove some kind of production, you can maybe go up to, I don't know, 20, and in the third year, you know, go for it. That means that you're Hawaii, you know, you care a little bit about Hawaii. You're here for the long run. That's one of the things we're considering.
Can we touch upon like pollination issues that might arise from that? You know, if we're growing males and females together, and I'm downwind of a farm that is, you know, 20 acres, and I'm trying to grow females and keep pollen off my plants. I know in Oregon they had a lot of issues with this cross-pollination, and I think the farmers unions are kind of aligning to solve those problems, whether it be seasonal or regional.
We had a great
Something that we
speaker
did-
in here yesterday. Were you here yesterday when Doug Fine was here?
I was over at the camp.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. No, I'm so glad you're here today. Well, you know, he has, and I know there's other people in the room too that have more of a national perspective on this, and a lot of it comes down to communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're at that scale or that problem here yet, but, and so that is a place where like our organization can come into play in helping to organize people that way.
And the communication was that you can have two crops kitty corner to each other, and the timing of pollination is what
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Yeah.
So as long as there's a break, you know, a 2 to 3 week break,
Yeah, there's a window. Right?
there's a window,
Yeah, yeah.
and we're not going to have that challenge necessarily. It's about talking to your neighbor.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess what they experienced in Oregon was that, you know, depending on the concentration, pollen can travel up to 17 miles
Oh, sure.
and pollinate crops. So I mean, valley here, up on the mountain, like 17 miles is a big chunk of this island. So I mean, it's something we should consider moving forward. I mean, we should all coexist and everybody should be able to do what they want to do, but communication for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's where I think, you know, having this organization is great, because these are great talking points and everybody needs this information and to be able to, you know, communicate what you're doing. So, you know, maybe something that we can take from this is creating a platform within the Hawaii Hemp Farmers
share.
Association to share, hey, who's growing what, and, you know, be respectful and also making sure that we're harvesting at appropriate times. You know, I was made aware that there was some crops that seeded out, the birds ate them, and, you know, sprinkled them around the island. So that's another thing that, you know, just to be mindful as you're growing, because you don't want to have that happen as well.
It's like guerrilla grows is one thing, but like, you know, blocks of, you know, sea of green is another thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so, something that has been proposed in other states is to have bona fide seed producers within our state. So say we have 20 bona fide seed producers, and they're going to produce that seed that will be grown out on other farms. And then that seed has to be closely tracked and looked after, so if it runs hot, or if it runs too many, it's a feminized seed, so if it runs too many males, whatever, it can be pulled out of that farm quickly, and we know where it went. So having certified seed producers, so you know at least the seed that's going out is going to be good, even if it gets sprinkled out by the birds. And you also can coordinate your timing with all the growers that are within that seed banking from that grower or from the 20 different growers. So it sets up a more direct communication platform and a more certified, less pollen. If that's what we're just growing for medicine, then that's another way.
I mean, I think it's just everybody should be able to do what they want.
Yeah, I think because we've had so many restrictions on being able to get any kind of seed, I think when we start to hear about restrictions, I mean, that was one of the lessons learned yesterday in one of the panels, was the incredible restrictions they put on hemp in California. It's made it absolutely not feasible, and the people, it's pay to play. Huge permit expenses, and anyway, we won't repeat that, but yeah, lesson learned. Should we go over some of the other points we're considering in terms of hemp? Yeah. So another one was residency. We're not sure what the percentages should be, but certainly individuals that are applying for hemp permits need to be here in Hawaii for at least 3 years.
Full-time.
Yeah, full-time resident, for sure. I mean, that you're here, you're committed. It means the money you're making and taking and the resources you're extracting are for our community. And then with regard to entities, whether, I mean, a lot of us are corporations or LLCs, certainly at least majority ownership. We know that. We haven't really talked about anything more than 51%, but those are some of the things we're talking about as well, to be able to protect the land, protect economic development, protect our communities, and support food security. Acreage, residency requirements. There's a provision in the new USDA, which is different than the current program we're under right now in Hawaii. And the current program is we're building and learning how to be with this plant. You can go hot a number of times. You can't use your plant. You lose your investment. You lose your time, but you don't lose your license. In the new Fed rules, and I imagine this is probably going to be changing soon, but as they are right now, as they're proposed right now, if farmer goes above 0.3 total THC within, I think, 3 times in 5 years, or 3 times they lose their license for at least 5 years. So you lose your time, you lose your investment when you're trying to farm, and because of the there are some allowances for deviations among labs in there, but there is what's I think kind of beautiful in the proposed USDA interim rules is that they're looking at, okay, well, you weren't intending to go hot. We're not going to penalize you. So you have to be able, they're saying to the states, and they're leaving it up to the states, and this is where we want to inform that conversation and tell share with the state what we want. If you've done, one of these 4 things, then yeah, we know that your intention was to be compliant and you don't get a strike. And to me, that was a very fair provision in there. I don't know if we want to talk about the 4 things we're thinking about proposing, but that's one of the things that we want the state to definitely do. I'm trying to remember where they were off the top of my head. I think I think you mentioned actually earlier, the seed had COAs that showed that it wasn't supposed to go hot. I'm sure there's a couple of practices we know that can help. There's certain algaes you can apply that supposedly keep things level in terms of chemical compounds. I don't remember the other ones too. But anyway, we want to offer 4. And the farmer, all they have to do is show some kind of documentation if they've gone hot, that they complied. We don't want this to be a huge paperwork trail. I mean, the amount of paperwork we have to do right now is pretty enormous in the reporting. So we just, it's not something you have to prove up front, but you better keep some kind of record of one of these 4 things, so if you are hot, you can show the state you didn't mean to be, and you don't get a strike.
Yeah, I mean, imagine you have 3 strikes and you've invested $1 million in your business. And so like I'm out of the game for 5 years. Like what do I do? Just like mothball like everything and like call it a life? It's like, so I think that they're gonna watch how this thing rolls out next year. It's, for lack of a better term, it's gonna be a shit show on the mainland. Guys are already diving out of windows, because they know that their genetics are gonna.
And they already purchased their seed.
Yeah, they already purchased seed. I mean, it's kind of their fault because they knew it was happening, and God bless HDOA. They put us on that standard, and it was very inconvenient. It would have been great to have a good year under old rules, but at least some people who are watching and paying to play are know how to make it work. So I think the thing that I'd like to leave the conversation with everybody here as hemp farmers or aspiring hemp farmers is that this thing, the American hemp farmer, has got to be one of the hardest working people in the country, and just the vertical integration, everything from like getting a good seed, all the paperwork, getting in the ground, fighting, and working with the natural environment here, the advantages, disadvantages we have. The inability to move the flower, just everything, and then all the vertical integration costs, because like the biomass farmer still has to pick that crop, get it separated from the stem, get it dried, just to like potentially get some payback, producing biomass, much less the investment that's going to be required to have your own extraction facility, at least to make crude. You've got to think that and that's what we're trying to preserve, maintain and preserve, is the Hawaiian farmer's ability to take biomass, add value to it by drying it, put it into its first level of added value production to stabilize and put it on a shelf and have some shelf life, but also get a higher value for their crop than it would be as a raw commodity producer, is essential for moving forward. Or if we can't do that, then we'll watch the industry. The longer the delay is in changing this rule, the only people who can come in are big shoulders and big people. So if that's an initiative that you want to avoid, then we need to change this law ASAP. And we also kind of need to recognize that initiatives that are Hawaii, have a genesis in Hawaii, run by Hawaiians, Hawaii, people, and I'm a little worried about the acreage restriction because some people in the state who are Hawaii residents and receiving their capital in state are ready to go beyond 10 acres or 20 acres. And, their facility will be the core for an entire county's production, potentially, and give the smallholder biomass producer the opportunity to grow a very valuable biomass crop, and I can get 1,000 dry pounds out of an acre if I do it right and grow it under lights. These aren't completely adapted genetics either, so if I can sell that for $75, $100 a pound to an extractor here in the state, that's a pretty good, 3-month run for the farmer.
It is tricky, Ray. I mean, we may have to massage that a little bit. I understand what you're saying. I mean, but we all have the same objectives, and the delay may only be a year or two, if someone's serious. But, it's a conversation, so I don't know if anyone knows.
It's there's a big bottom line to it. So, Greg, go ahead.
I guess everybody remembers Catch-22, the movie.
Yes.
Well, that's kind of what we're in here, because the reality is that if you grow a crop even at 0.3 or 0.1, and you take that crop and you extract it, it's going to go over. There's no way. It's going to be over 3% or more once it's extracted. So then it's automatically a marijuana crop because it's gone into a 0.3. Then you can take that crop and you can dilute it, or you can extract it further, take the THC out, and get it down to 0.3. So it's all in the processing. It's not in the farming, it's in the processing that you get it down to where you want it. So all this trouble of trying to force a farmer to grow at 0.3 is just a waste of time, because the processor can do anything to that product. They can make it into, they can take the THC completely out of it if you want, and you can make it into whatever you like, because there's so many new ways to process that it's not even an issue. So all this doesn't make sense in the big picture, because worried about 0.3 is not really where the problem is. It's worried about what's in that container that you put in your mouth.
That's so true. Yeah. And yet these are the federal rules and the state rules we're living with now. I think in 5 years, it's not even going to be the same landscape 5 years from now. I know we're going to see massive changes on the federal level, but right now we're trying to do the best we can, to comply. And as Ray said, in many ways we were fortunate to have Attorney head up our hemp program, because she buckled our seat belts 6 ways to breakfast to make sure the state would never be sued. And even though we lost opportunity to make some money, these new federal rules were not too much of a shock to us. We'll be able to get through as everyone else on the mainland scrambles. I'm trying to remember some of the other. Are we out of time? Need to wrap it up. Okay. Well, please. I'll let Ray wrap it up. I'll just say, become a member of our organization. Reach out to us, especially if you're hemp farmers out there. We're going for some very nice changes to make the hemp program farmer and INA and community friendly this year, and we're so happy to be able to work with the state and the legislature to do that. So, Ray, anything?
Yeah, just come up and talk to us. Let's talk story, but Hawaii hempfarmersassociation.org is where you can sign up. And if you're in this industry, I'm actually a call to action. Please join. So.
I wanted to say one more thing if I can.
Please.
So, we talk a lot about THC and CBD and all that stuff, and that's really, really important, because it's gonna help fund food security here, and it's gonna help our communities. But almost everyone in this room, I'm sure, is so passionate about that plant because of the 50,000 plus uses it has. They're going to be so incredibly important to our island. So as we struggle through these little restrictions, I mean, the future out there is immensely bright in terms of what Hawaii can do to use this plant to move towards greater sustainability on all levels. You know, biofuels, food, cloth, whatever. And quite frankly, that's why we got into more the CBD part, is because we needed the money to be able to fund the infrastructure to do some of these other actions like grow for fiber, so that we can help move our communities towards greater sustainability and not be dependent on so many imports. So we just have to keep the big picture in mind as we're going forward and working through all these little bumps, because it's so frustrating. And I'm so grateful to all our farmers out there. I mean, Ray and everyone who's just been in the trenches, not just the last couple of years, but literally for decades, you know, helping to wake people up to the value of hemp. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Gail and Ray. Great speaking. We're going to take